It is 2 a.m. The screen of your phone is the only light in the room. You know you have a massive deadline tomorrow morning. Your eyes are heavy, your body is exhausted, yet your thumb just keeps scrolling. Just one more video, you tell yourself, but it is never just one. And then, the heavy wave of guilt crashes over you. You stare at the ceiling, whispering to the dark room, "Why am I so incredibly lazy?" But what if I told you that your late-night scrolling and endless delays have absolutely nothing to do with laziness? Welcome to Mind Decoder. I am Neo. Today we are going to dive deep into the real reason you procrastinate. It is a hidden mechanism in your brain that nobody ever warned you about. Society has conditioned us to believe that if you delay your tasks, you are simply lacking discipline. You just need to work harder and force it. So you download 5 different time management apps, you write strict daily schedules, and you promise yourself that tomorrow will definitely be a much more productive day. Yet when tomorrow arrives, you find yourself staring at the exact same blank screen, paralyzed by an invisible force. The cycle simply repeats itself all over again. Let me introduce you to the procrastination monster. You might think it is a creature made of pure laziness, but look closely at what it is holding. It is not holding a pillow because it wants to sleep. It is holding a shield. Yes, procrastination is not a time management problem at all. According to psychological research, specifically the work of Dr. Fuchsia Sirois, procrastination is actually an emotion regulation problem. Your brain is trying to protect you. Protect you from what? From the negative emotions attached to the task itself. Boredom, confusion, anxiety, self-doubt, or the paralyzing fear of completely failing. When you look at that daunting assignment, your brain does not see a simple task. It sees a massive, overwhelming emotional threat that must be avoided. So your mind hits the emergency escape button. It craves immediate relief and finds it in the easiest distraction available, like scrolling through your social media feed. You are not lazy. You are just emotionally overwhelmed. Let us look closer at what happens inside your head when you finally say, "I will do it tomorrow." Think about actual laziness for a second. When a truly lazy person avoids work, they feel perfectly fine about it. They are relaxed, enjoying their free time without care. But when you procrastinate, are you truly relaxing? Not at all. You are painfully aware of the task you are avoiding, and it eats you alive from the inside. You are essentially choosing to suffer right now, just to avoid the specific type of suffering that comes with actually starting your daunting assignment. It is a terrible trade. This brings us to the biggest lie productivity gurus tell you, that all you need is a better calendar, a new planner, or a strict morning routine. If procrastination was simply a matter of forgetting your tasks, or not knowing how to manage your schedule, those colorful reminder apps would have easily cured you by now. But they do not work, do they? Because the problem is not a lack of time. The core issue is a deeply rooted inability to manage your negative emotions. Whenever you sit down to work, you are not just facing a blank document. You are facing the intense fear that your work might not be good enough. You might be feeling a deep sense of incompetence, profound boredom, or the heavy pressure of expectations. These emotions are incredibly uncomfortable for your brain to process. Your mind is wired to seek immediate emotional relief. So when the discomfort peaks, it desperately looks for an escape route to make you feel better right away. Opening a social media app provides a tiny, instant drop of dopamine. It is a quick, emotional band-aid that temporarily distracts you from the anxiety of your responsibilities. However, this instant gratification is a dangerous trap. It relieves the negative feelings for just a brief moment, but it secretly multiplies the underlying anxiety for later. So the next time someone calls you lazy, remember this. Laziness is a lack of effort. Procrastination, on the other hand, is an exhausting emotional battle against yourself. You are not broken, and you are definitely not a slacker. You are simply stuck in a maladaptive coping mechanism that your brain developed to keep you safe. To truly break free from this paralyzing cycle, we must stop fighting the clock. Instead, we need to look directly at the emotional fear center of your brain. It is time to meet the primitive alarm system inside your head, the amygdala. and discover why it treats your homework exactly like a dangerous wild predator. When the amygdala spots a threat, it does not care if it is a hungry lion or an empty spreadsheet. It just hits the panic button. Imagine you have to write a simple report. On the surface, it is just typing words on a keyboard. It should not be terrifying at all. But your brain does not just see the typing. It sees the heavy, invisible emotional baggage attached to that specific document, weighing it down completely. First, there is frustration. The task might be incredibly tedious, and your mind rebels against being forced to focus on something so profoundly boring and unstimulating. Then, there is confusion. You might not know exactly how to start, and that lack of clear direction creates a deep, uncomfortable sense of vulnerability. And finally, the heaviest layer of all is self-doubt. The terrifying thought that what you produce will be judged, criticized, or simply not good enough. Suddenly, that innocent little document transforms into a terrifying emotional monster, standing between you and your peace of mind. Your brain must neutralize this threat. In psychology, we call procrastination an emotion-focused coping strategy. It is your mind prioritizing short-term mood repair over long-term goal pursuit. When you close the laptop and open a video game, the fear instantly vanishes. Your brain successfully protected you from the immediate emotional discomfort. Dr. Timothy Pitchell, a leading researcher on this topic, famously stated that procrastination is the misregulation of emotion. You are essentially comforting yourself. It is like putting a tiny emotional band-aid on a gaping wound. It feels safe right now, but the underlying problem is still bleeding heavily. Because while you are playing that game, the task is not gone. It is quietly growing larger and more intimidating in the dark corners of your mind. Your default mode network, the background app of your brain, starts ruminating. It constantly reminds you of your failure to start, generating intense guilt. This guilt is a new negative emotion, which makes the task feel even more threatening, forcing you to procrastinate even further to escape the guilt. It is a perfect, flawless trap. But to understand how to break out, we need to witness the epic battle happening between two key brain regions. Meet the prefrontal cortex. It is the logical CEO of your brain, sitting right behind your forehead. It cares deeply about your long-term success and goals. When you schedule a study session for tomorrow, it is this rational part of your brain making that excellent, responsible decision. It wants you to succeed. But deep inside your mind lies an older, much faster structure called the amygdala. Think of it as your brain's overly dramatic, highly sensitive alarm system. The amygdala does not care about your future career or your upcoming exam grades. It only cares about keeping you safe from immediate pain right now. So you finally sit down at your desk. The prefrontal cortex says, "All right, let us get to work." But then you look at the difficult assignment. Instantly, a wave of negative emotion hits you. Maybe it is fear of failure or just intense boredom. To the amygdala, these emotions are actual threats. The alarm bell rings loudly. The amygdala triggers a fight or flight response, treating that blank document as if it were a dangerous, hungry, wild animal. This is called an amygdala hijack. When this happens, the emotional center of your brain literally overpowers and shuts down your logical prefrontal cortex. Your rational CEO is temporarily locked out of the control room. You can no longer think logically about the long-term consequences of missing your deadline. Your brain is now in survival mode. The only objective is to escape the source of the emotional pain and find immediate comfort and safety elsewhere. And what is the fastest way to feel safe? Opening a funny video, eating a snack, or doing literally anything other than the scary, stressful task. Once you escape, your brain releases a tiny burst of relief. It feels incredibly good in the moment, effectively soothing your panicked, hyperactive alarm system. But here is the real tragedy. By escaping, you just taught your brain a terrible lesson. You proved that avoiding the task actually keeps you safe. So the next time you face a similar task, your brain remembers that escaping worked perfectly. The habit of procrastination becomes stronger and heavily reinforced. You are fighting a biological reflex. But why is it so easy to throw your future self under the bus? Let us look at the brain scanner. Let us examine a fascinating concept called present bias. To understand it, we must look at what happens when you think about your future. Psychologist Hal Hershfield conducted a famous study using fMRI brain scanners. He asked people to think about their present selves, and specific neural pathways illuminated. But then he asked them to think about their future selves, the ones who actually have to wake up tomorrow and write that difficult essay. Fascinatingly, their brain activity shifted completely. The region that lit up was the exact same area used to think about a complete stranger. Your brain literally does not recognize the future you. On a neurological level, tomorrow's version of you is basically just some random person. Imagine you are holding a heavy, uncomfortable box representing your daunting task. Now, imagine a complete stranger is standing right next to you. If you have the option to hand the heavy box to the stranger and walk away to play video games, your brain says, absolutely yes. This is the empathy gap. Why should the present you suffer and do the hard work when you can just make that stranger suffer instead? So you confidently push the deadline to tomorrow. You feel a massive wave of immediate relief because the problem belongs to someone else now. The tragic flaw in this biological illusion is that time moves forward. Tomorrow always arrives, and that poor stranger you burdened is actually you. You wake up the next morning and suddenly, you are the one holding the impossibly heavy box. And now, you have even less time. This brings us to the panic monster. Why do chronic procrastinators suddenly find the motivation to work when the deadline is only hours away? When the threat becomes immediate, your brain floods with cortisol and adrenaline. The sheer panic finally overrides your amygdala's desire for short-term comfort. This massive stress response violently shocks your prefrontal cortex back online. You enter an intense survival focus, furiously typing your essay at the last minute. You might finish the work, but at what cost? This constant adrenaline dependency creates a devastating cycle of exhaustion, self-hatred, and an endless guilt spiral. Once the panic monster leaves, you are left with the physical and emotional exhaustion of the ordeal. But the worst part is what happens next. Instead of feeling proud of completing the task, you feel a deep, heavy sense of guilt. You tell yourself, why do I always do this? This guilt quickly morphs into intense shame. Your inner critic wakes up and begins whispering that you are undisciplined, lazy, and simply incapable of changing. Here is the neurological catch. Shame is one of the most painful, uncomfortable emotions a human being can experience. It heavily burdens your emotional center. Because your brain is now flooded with all this new negative emotion, your overall mood drops significantly lower than it was before you even started. And what does your amygdala do when it senses a massive drop in your mood? It immediately hits that familiar red emergency escape button again. To repair your damaged mood, you seek out easy dopamine. You open social media, watch another video, and distract yourself from the painful guilt. This creates the ultimate procrastination doom loop. You delay, you feel guilty. The guilt makes you feel terrible, so you delay again to feel better. Over months and years, this constant cycle physically rewires your brain. Procrastination stops being just a bad habit and becomes your default coping mechanism. Every time you beat yourself up for being lazy, you are actually feeding the exact negative emotion that will cause you to procrastinate tomorrow. The procrastination monster does not feed on your laziness. It feeds directly on your stress, your anxiety, and your harsh self-criticism. It loves your guilt. We often think that being incredibly strict and harsh with ourselves is the only way to build discipline. But science tells a completely different story. The harder you punish yourself for delaying a task, the more intimidating the next task becomes. You are accidentally building a higher wall to climb. But sometimes your brain tries to be sneaky. Have you ever noticed that your room gets incredibly clean right before a huge exam? This is a clever trick your mind plays to escape guilt while still avoiding the real work. Welcome to the world of productive procrastination. Have you ever noticed that right before a massive exam or a huge project is due, you suddenly feel an overwhelming urge to clean your entire room? You organize your desk, you finally do the laundry, and you even color code your notes. You feel incredibly busy, productive, and proud of yourself. But this is a very clever psychological trap. We call it productive procrastination, and it is your brain's ultimate trick to escape negative emotions. By doing tasks that are genuinely useful but completely unrelated to your actual deadline, your brain creates a brilliant emotional shield against intense guilt. The amygdala looks at the scary, stressful essay and says, "Absolutely no." But it looks at the messy closet and says, "Yes, we can easily fix that." Cleaning provides immediate, visible results. It gives you a quick hit of dopamine and a false sense of achievement, temporarily silencing your loud inner critic. You are essentially lying to yourself. You are using the feeling of being busy to mask the terrifying reality that you are still avoiding the main problem. And when the room is finally spotless, the illusion shatters. The daunting assignment is still there, waiting in the dark, and now you have even less time. But why is that specific assignment so terrifying in the first place? Why does your brain prefer doing literally anything else over starting the actual work? This brings us to another hidden layer of procrastination. For many people, the delay is not caused by laziness, but by a crippling sense of perfectionism. If you are an overthinker, you likely hold yourself to impossibly high standards. You are absolutely terrified of producing something that is flawed, average, or imperfect. Before you even write the first word, your brain is already projecting a future where your work is harshly judged, criticized, and ultimately rejected by others. Your subconscious creates a twisted logic. If you try your absolute best and still fail, it means you are simply not smart enough or good enough. But if you wait until the very last minute, you give yourself a built-in excuse. You can easily tell yourself, "I only failed because I rushed it." Procrastination becomes a protective shield for your fragile self-esteem. You would rather be labeled as lazy than face the devastating possibility of being truly inadequate. To a perfectionist, effort is extremely dangerous. If you put in 100% effort and the result is imperfect, your inner critic will destroy you. It feels infinitely safer to say, "I could have done a masterpiece if I had more time," rather than admitting your best was just average. This fear of imperfection creates a massive psychological barrier. Every time you delay, the wall between you and the starting line grows taller and thicker. You become completely paralyzed. Your brain calculates that doing absolutely nothing is emotionally safer than trying and potentially exposing your deep flaws to the world. So if time management tools do not work, and hating yourself only makes it worse, how do you actually defeat the procrastination monster once and for all? The answer lies in a psychological concept that sounds completely counterintuitive. To stop procrastinating, you must practice radical self-compassion and forgive your past mistakes. Research by Dr. Kristin Neff shows that self-compassion is not making excuses. It is actively lowering the emotional threat level inside your hyperactive brain. When you forgive yourself for delaying, you are telling your amygdala that it is safe. The red alarm shuts off, and your logical CEO returns. Once your prefrontal cortex is back in charge, you can use a technique called shrinking the fear. Stop looking at the massive, overwhelming final goal. Instead of telling yourself you need to write an entire essay, just tell your brain to open the document and write exactly one single sentence.
You just have to open it. But what if it's bad? It will be okay. Let's look together. I don't know. I really don't want to. Let's take just 5 minutes for this. Okay? Let's make a deal.
Deal.
We are in agreement. This is my inner mind space. And look at this mysterious light.
So you have forgiven yourself, and you open the document. But what if the panic alarm in your head still tries to wake up? This is where you use the 5-minute rule. You make a firm deal with your brain that you will only work for 5 minutes. You promise your amygdala that if the task still feels completely unbearable after 5 minutes, you have full permission to stop immediately and walk away. To your primitive emotional brain, 5 short minutes sounds like a very low threat level. It lowers its heavy shields and allows you to begin. But here is the brilliant psychological trick. Once you actually start working, a phenomenon called the Zeigarnik effect takes over your entire cognitive network. Discovered by psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik, this effect proves that human brains absolutely hate incomplete tasks. We have a strong natural urge to finish what we start. So, crossing that initial 5-minute threshold is usually all it takes to break the heavy spell of paralysis and keep your momentum going. Another powerful neuroscience strategy is temptation bundling. This means pairing the scary, boring task with something that instantly releases a healthy dose of dopamine. For example, you only allow yourself to drink your absolute favorite coffee or listen to your favorite podcast while you are doing the daunting work. This clever trick gives your brain the immediate emotional reward it desperately craves, satisfying the amygdala, while your prefrontal cortex gets the actual meaningful work done. But listen to me carefully. Even with all these scientific tools, there will be days when the procrastination monster still manages to win the battle. You will have moments where you fall right back into the endless scrolling and the dark guilt spiral. And honestly, that is perfectly normal. Building a brand new coping mechanism takes time. Remember the scientific study about habits? It takes an average of 66 days to form one. It is never a 21-day magic trick. It is a slow, gradual process of physically rewiring the deep neural pathways inside your head. Every single time you choose to forgive yourself instead of feeling shame, you are actively healing your brain and breaking the old, toxic loop. Change does not happen overnight. You are fighting against years of deeply ingrained biological reflexes. So, above all else, please be extremely patient with yourself. The procrastination monster might never disappear completely, but over time, as you learn to regulate your emotions, it will slowly shrink into a harmless pet. You will learn to recognize when your amygdala is panicking, and instead of escaping, you will simply take a deep breath and start the 5 minutes. Stop calling yourself lazy. Stop beating yourself up at 2 in the morning. You are just a human being dealing with some very difficult emotions. Thank you so much for joining me today on this journey. I truly hope this video helped you understand your own mind a little bit better. If you found this helpful, please remember to like the video and subscribe to Mind Decoder. We have many more psychological mysteries to unravel together soon. I will see you in the next episode. Until then, be kind to your mind and remember that taking small steps is still moving beautifully forward. Before you go, there is a brief and very important message I need to share with you regarding the psychological concepts discussed in this video. The information provided in this video is strictly for educational and informational purposes only. It is definitely not intended as a substitute for professional advice. If you are currently experiencing severe mental health struggles, deep, overwhelming anxiety, or chronic depression, please reach out directly to a qualified mental health professional.